Hi everyone, Kamal from Wings Over TO here. I've been wanting to try a fly-in for a little while now, but I was looking for something kind of small, definitely not anywhere close as crazy as Oshkosh. And in early August I heard about a fly-in happening at Sarnia, which is an airport about a 90-minute flight down from here. And I thought that'd be perfect. Nice small airport, nice small fly-in. But even that small fly-in turned out to be more than I was expecting. And I ended up in a near miss with another plane that quite frankly scared the crap out of me. But I did learn a valuable lesson from it, so stay tuned. I hope you'll find it useful too. I didn't know it at the time, but the Sarnia airport is actually named after Chris Hadfield, the famous Canadian astronaut and former commander of the International Space Station. And Chris was actually going to be coming out for the fly-in to lend his support for the local airport. They were in financial trouble and they were looking for some government support. All I had to do was convince Maruna that this would be a fun thing to do. Luckily for me, she happens to be a huge fan of Chris Hadfield. It was his rendition of David Bowie's Space Oddity, recorded in the ISS, that initially got her hooked.
This is Major Tom to ground control. I've left forevermore.
And she immediately agreed that this would be a fun way to spend a Saturday. So we gassed up the Sierra here, which I've taken to calling Oscar the Grouch, and if you've seen some of my previous videos, you can probably guess why. And we headed down to Sarnia. Unfortunately, somehow I managed not to record the audio on the flight down. Normally it wouldn't matter much, as the flights themselves tend to be pretty uneventful. I wish that had been the case this time, but as we were on short final, someone in a Lancer appeared out of nowhere and passed overhead, barely 30 feet above, and landed in front of us. Needless to say, this startled the crap out of me, and instead of focusing on flying, I took a moment to call him out over the radio before I recovered from a shock and did a go-around. Under other circumstances, I would have said no harm, no foul, but this was a pretty serious near miss, so I was hoping to debrief with the other pilot to figure out what went wrong and how we came to be so close. Unfortunately, by the time we landed and got out, he was no longer at his plane, and there were so many people around that there was no way I'd know who he was. So we put it behind us and focused on enjoying the event, which turned out to be a lot bigger than I'd expected, with probably 100 or so planes having flown in, plus a ton of locals driving out to the airport to meet Chris. It was a lot of fun checking out all the planes there. I even got to see the new Vans RV-14 that Steve from Flight Shops and his buddies built. If you haven't seen it, he's got a great series of videos on how they built the plane from scratch. Even for someone like me who has no intention of ever building a plane, it was fascinating to watch, and I learned a lot about the inner workings of planes from it. I'll put a link to it in the description. Steve's buddy Dave had come out for the fly-in, and he actually passed me on the approach to the field and flew the pattern right in front of me. That thing really moves. It felt like he blew by me like I was standing still. After wandering around for a bit, we got into line to meet Chris Hadfield, and he turned out to be even nicer in person than he seems on TV. He was warm, friendly, and seemed genuinely interested in finding out a bit about us too. I'm just sorry we hadn't brought along one of his books to sign. Right after meeting Chris, we had to book it back to Toronto to meet some friends, so we hopped back in Oscar and flew home. But the story doesn't quite end here. That close call I had really stuck with me, and I found myself obsessively searching on the internet to find out who the pilot was so I could reach out to him. I actually even reached out to Flight Shops in the hopes that Dave had been recording and managed to capture the audio, so I could at least figure out if I'd just missed some calls from that pilot, or if he'd even been making any radio calls on the multicom in the first place. No such luck though, Dave wasn't recording that day. But I did manage to track down the pilot, and I reached out to him. A few weeks later, I got on the phone with him to talk it over. He hadn't seen me, and he hadn't heard any of the radio calls that I'd been making. I sent him the video snippet of the incident, and he was genuinely shocked that we could have been that close to each other without him even realizing it. He said he'd been making all his radio calls, and I find it really strange that neither one of us heard the other one in the pattern, even though we were hearing all the other planes. I gotta say, talking to him didn't really give me the sense of closure that I was looking for. I'm not sure what I wanted, maybe some sort of aha moment that said, here's a mistake that I made or that he made, something we could learn from. But nothing like that was coming in the call, so we wished each other well and we hung up. I wasn't satisfied just chalking this up to an "oh well, it happens" moment though, so I went back online and started analyzing our flight tracks. I had mine for my ForeFlight log, and luckily his plane has ADS-B out, so I was able to get a really good track of his almost all the way to landing from FlightAware. And what I saw was a couple of seemingly minor things that combined to make for this dangerous event. As I was crossing midfield to join the left downwind, the Lancer approached the field from the southwest and then flew over the base and final legs at about 2,000 feet above field elevation. I ended up a bit wide and long on my downwind while he was doing his rapid turn and descent to cross back over the field to join left downwind. When I first saw our flight tracks, I thought to myself, well, he was high and descending, maybe his plane was nose high and he just didn't see me through his cowl. Unfortunate, but understandable. I tried to look for things that I'd done wrong. How did I miss him in my peripheral vision as I was turning to final? Admittedly, my pattern was a bit wide and long, so maybe I wasn't quite where he was looking. But given I made all my radio calls and was in front of him in the pattern, that shouldn't have mattered as I had the right of way. As I dug deeper and plotted our positions, I saw that as I was turning to final, the Lancer was coming downwind and continuing his sweeping left turn to base. It became clear that as he was on his downwind leg at 1,100 feet, I would have been right in front of him on my base at about 1,150 feet. How did he not see me there, right in front of him, barely a mile ahead? Was he so focused on the runway as he was flying his pattern that he wasn't looking for other traffic or paying attention to the radio calls? Our paths eventually converged here on short final, with the Lancer coming right over top of me. When I asked him about his unusual approach, he said he often comes in to do a low and over, and then circles around and does a break, which results effectively in a forced approach kind of landing. Given that, and what I saw in the flight track data, I got pretty annoyed at his cavalier attitude and his decision to fly an irregular approach during such a busy fly-in. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments if you see something in this that I'm overlooking, and let me know if you think I'm right to be upset about this. Maybe I'm overreacting and this is just normal stuff that happens at busy, untowered airports. So what are the lessons in this for me? I've got 3 of them, and they're all related to situational awareness. First, and this won't be a surprise to you pilots out there, but keep your head on a swivel. I'm pretty shocked and disappointed that I didn't see that other plane. He was probably right there on the edge of my peripheral vision as I was turning from base to final, and if I just turned my head, I probably would have seen him. Second, fly a regular pattern, particularly at these busy, untowered fields. It's a lot easier for other pilots to see you if you're where they're expecting you to be. And third, pay extra close attention to those radio calls that other pilots are making. Even if you're number 1 and clear for the runway, you just never know when somebody's going to be doing something that you're not expecting. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it and found it somewhat useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help me out. I'll see you next time, and in the meantime, fly safe out there.